All right, so like I said in my little setup, if you did that ahead of time, is you could have set up in all these little dishes if you want to set up all your stuff in front of you, or there'll be plenty of time to open your bar and sample it as we go along. So one of the things that's good with the setup over here is you have enough here if you take small pieces to do this more than once, to share it with your friends, to do all that sort of stuff. And feel free to answer, to yell questions out too, because I'm monitoring the questions. I'm happy to pause and answer questions at any point in time. Small piece, warm mouth. So having a warm mouth is really important, which is why I said maybe have some hot water nearby, maybe have some tea nearby, maybe have something like that in your cup, just to make sure your mouth is nice and warm. And then just had to let it melt. You can chew it a little bit if you want to. I like to really let the first piece melt to really tell the flavor or the texture, get some of the flavor. And that really takes it, lets it melt a little bit more slowly, and you can enjoy the flavor a little bit more. All right, so if no one has any questions, let's go ahead and get started. And now I have them all laid out on our map here. And you can see that some are in green, some are in yellow, some are in blue. And some of you who know a lot more about the genetics of chocolate know that this is an extremely simplified map of chocolate genetics, but it does explain a lot of what the Spanish and what the spread of chocolate throughout the world, sort of the genetics that was known at the time, so not with as much in Peru and Ecuador. And that is what a lot of these chocolates here represent. So we have the Criollo beans, which is represented by the Venezuelan, which would be the white-seeded beans, some of the most prized that were known to the Spanish. And then we have some of the Trinitario beans, which are what most of the world are planted on, and that's a mix between the Criollo and then the Forastero bean, which is in the yellow, which came out of Brazil. And those are a couple of the genotypes of the chocolate, and that's what we're primarily going to be sampling here today. All right. So we are not necessarily going to go in order 1 through 7, because after I set that up 1 through 7, you can see that's by percentage. I realized it'd be fun to jump around a little bit. So we'll go ahead and start with our first one, which is the Belize 68%. And one of the fun, and you can go ahead and open your bar. I actually have a whole bunch of samples here already made. I suggest taking your square, because inside your box here, we'll go ahead and open it. Right, we can show that up real close, right? I'd say one of these squares broken in half. You can do the whole square if that's sort of what you like. And go ahead and take one. And when you open the package, you can give it a smell. Now, some of these, I realize this one is sealed shut. Some of them have tape. Some of them have sealed. If they're sealed, sorry, I didn't mention, you may need to cut it. Some of them are just taped shut, and that's easier to open. This is maybe the older style. And then you're just going to go ahead and put it in your mouth. And I like to just let it melt. And sometimes it takes a while. Then you can really tell if your mouth is warm or not, because if your mouth isn't warm, then your chocolate just won't melt very quickly, and then you can sort of rectify that situation. So I like to use my tongue and press it up against the top of my mouth. Again, a bite or two can speed things along if you need to, but we have plenty of big bars here. And really a big shout out, thank you to Will for essentially giving me a really good deal on this set, so I can provide a really good deal to you. Because normally, retail, we have $5 for each one of these little bars and $8 for each one of these big bars. So really have a good deal. All right, so hopefully yours is starting to melt now. And one of the fun things about what Will has done with the selection here is he's chosen different beans and roasted them and chosen flavor profiles that really exemplify the whole range of what you can get in a chocolate that is just chocolate and sugar, right? How can something taste fruity if it's just chocolate and just sugar? And so that's what this one is trying to get across, is the fruitiness of the Maya Mountain beans. Some of the really old original producers of beans. So there are lots and lots of makers that make chocolate from Maya Mountain cooperative beans. So this one at 68% is going to be a little bit lighter. and maybe it tastes a little bit fruity to you. Maybe you taste some other things that are going on there. And then go ahead and take a second piece. And that second piece lets you relax a little bit more, lets you get a little bit more of an idea. Once you have an idea of what is going on with the chocolate, it helps you pay attention and look for that the second time around. So we'll go ahead and try a little bit more. And so one of the interesting things about the genetics that you have on this map, if you go back to Spanish, what does criollo mean? Criollo means native, and forastero means foreigner. And of course, in the 1600s and the 1500s and the 1400s, those weren't terms that were used by the people living there, because chocolate was just based on where it came from. You know, it came from Lake Maracaibo, or it came from, you know, the Chuao Valley, or, you know, it was just where the chocolate came from. But when the Spanish came and they found these criollo beans, which are white-seeded, and planted them everywhere because they were the most valuable beans, and they didn't do very well. They died. They sort of looked around for what else they could, you know, something that they could plant in all their colonies all over the world, in Indonesia and India, in Africa, and all these sorts of places. And they found this bean out of Brazil called the forastero, and they planted that on the island of Trinidad. And that's when people realized, wait a minute, this bean is different. This is a forastero. This is a foreign bean, much darker, much more productive, much more bitter. And then the natural hybrid is called the Trinitario, which is why you see so much green all over your map, because there were criollo trees planted all over the world, but now they were sort of died out, and the forasteros were planted, but then they made these natural hybrids. But now what's been really interesting over the last 300 years is in all these places, you sort of have vestigial populations of the criollo trees, or especially in Central America and Belize, there may be ancient plantations that are still around. The genetics are very complex, but they've sort of naturalized to their environments over the last 300 years. So you have very distinct flavors, very distinct terroirs, very distinct genetics all throughout the world. So in general, I labeled this one as green. It's probably a mix of a lot of different genetics there in Belize. All right, so that was the Belize bar. I said 68% from Maya Mountain. And you can look on the back, you can see if you agree with the information that Will puts on his bars. He sort of has this flavor wheel, and you can see if what you thought that tasted like fit within his flavor wheel. All right, so there we go. So now, until, like I said, this year, the craziest thing that he did with the chocolate bar was put salt in it. And that's one of the great things about the chocolate here, even though it doesn't say specifically, although it does say on the back, right? No soy, no dairy, no nuts, no grain, no refined sugar, no animal products. And that's true about all of his chocolate, very allergen-free. But this was as crazy as he went to, getting the red salt into the Honduras bar. So go ahead and open that one and break it into pieces. And this one comes from Honduras, very close to Belize geographically, but a very different flavor. So this one he selected for its nuttiness, for its carameliness, and mixed that in with the salt and used that as the base for the salt bar. Now this one is a little bit different than what I would normally do, because I found in general the salt bars are not ones you want to just let sit on your tongue and melt. They're very much more chewers, because the salt crystals are often big and granular, and you get really sharp salt taste mixed, and it doesn't really mix as well with the chocolate. So go ahead and try it both ways. Go ahead and put one in your mouth and chew it up. Now don't chew it up completely, but chew it up enough to mix that salt in with the chocolate. And then let that melt. It goes much faster, but can you really taste how that salt and the chocolate mix and really get that nutty, caramely flavor out of the Honduras? Only 2% more chocolate, 2% less sugar than the Belize, but you have your very, very different flavor. And then go ahead and take your other piece and just let it melt, just to notice the contrast. So this one, don't chew it. Just stick it in your mouth, let it melt. And originally this bar, you used to be able to see the salt crystals studded across the Funny. All right. So how old is Ephraim today, these days? 7? Says the Honduras tastes like a swimming pool. Ha, funny. I guess you get the salt, right? Guess he's been drinking some pool water. All right, but notice how different it is if you just let it melt. It's almost like digging through the ground and having a big chunk of rock come out. That salt sort of comes, and it's very sharp. It doesn't mix nearly as well as when you just let it melt. But when you mix it and crunch it together, right? 6. All right, pretty close. All right, but I just think it's so fun to contrast those two. Because right off the bat, you only have 2% difference in percentage, but you have a completely different taste, right? Very, very different taste. Of the single origin bars, this one is the best seller. All right, but now just to confuse things a little bit, we are not going to try the Porcelana next. We're going to go ahead and jump to the Ghana. And the Ghana is over here in the yellow section. And you hear different numbers from the press, from the chocolate industry, maybe 50%, maybe 60%, whatever chocolate comes from Western Africa, from Ivory Coast, from Ghana, from that area. Most of it is all those Forastero beans that I talked about, dark, bitter. They're going to the world's biggest chocolate manufacturers. They're not guaranteed to be slave-free. They're not guaranteed to be child-free. They're just these huge, massive conglomerates. But then you can get different organizations that are working within these countries, like this one, the Rainforest Alliance, that helps get these people out of this industrial system and certify and get beans that you know are ethically made, ethically harvested, ethically grown. And one of the interesting things Will said about this one is, this one he chose intentionally to be, you can see on here it says roasty and classicy. He roasts this one's much hotter and much longer than any of the other chocolates. So maybe, hopefully that gave you enough time to go ahead and open this one. And I put this as a Forastero bean. Do I know for sure it's a Forastero bean? I don't absolutely know for sure. But I'm guessing since it comes from that area, it's probably a Forastero bean. All right, so go ahead and try this one. This one, if you see a description on my website, if you see a description anywhere that says it tastes chocolatey, and you're like, of course it tastes chocolatey, it's chocolate. Well, this is what someone means when they say a chocolate tastes chocolatey. Right, so when someone comes and says, I love dark chocolate, you know they want that intense, dark, not necessarily bitter, but dark, intense taste. This is one that I offer. This is not one that I offer to someone who says, what's a good starter dark chocolate? You know, that's just probably not, the Ghana 75 is not something I'm going to give them. But you can taste how intense, how direct, how earthy the Ghana is at 75%. And one of the interesting things you can sort of see in these bars, and you can see throughout the craft chocolate industry as a whole, is that when a group, when a cooperative essentially comes online, when they've gathered enough farmers, when they've created the infrastructure, the drying, the fermenting, to start providing beans out into the world, suddenly a lot of manufacturers all come out with a Ghana bar. A lot of manufacturers all come out with a Honduras bar, an India bar, right? Because a lot of the beans that you need for these, for a small craft chocolate makers, you're not buying in the entire supply. So as soon as a new cooperative comes online, they can sort of supply a wide range. And what's fun is to collect a lot of different bars all from the same area and try how different manufacturers all do things differently. And I do that for some bars where I put together a collection. I'm putting in a collection of Peruvian bars, of Ecuadorian bars, again, just to try all the differences from similar stock, but very different manufacturing. So, and it looks like we're getting a lot of different takes on this one. So we have the slightly burnt corners of a brownie pan, burnt black licorice. All right, I don't know if burnt black licorice, is that a good, or is that, I don't know. I don't really like licorice, but you can just taste how much darker that bar is at 75%. But it's not necessarily because it's 75%. It's because of how where the beans are, how they've been processed, how they've been dried, how they've been roasted, right? All those things go into the flavor. All right, so now that we've tried that one, now we're going to jump back to the Porcelana. And that wasn't just setting the Porcelana up for being sweeter and lighter. It was just to get that full range in the dark chocolate. But one of the things I really want you to notice is if you look at one of these Porcelana, compare it to the Ghana, or even compare it to the Honduras, or compare it to the Belize, notice how much lighter the color is of this Porcelana bar at 70%. Very, very light color. If you were just going to show me this, I'd say, holy smokes, this is a milk chocolate, right? It's a milk chocolate color. And this is the only one that would be blue that would be considered a Criollo bean from Venezuela, where most of these originated from, because the seeds are white. They still roast into a darker color, but that white seed really gives that light color. So go ahead and try the Venezuela, and I have little tiny pieces here, so I'm going to grab a couple pieces. You notice how smooth it is, how I almost call it bready or complex. And one of the interesting things about Porcelana is it was this very rare bean, but it turns out it's everywhere. There's lots of Porcelana in Venezuela. One of the fun things about Porcelana is because there's come from all these small little farms, all the Porcelanas really taste very different. So one Porcelana isn't the same as another Porcelana, but they're called Porcelana because the bean looks like porcelain. All right, so go ahead, try that one a second time if you want to really get a difference between what you have with a pure Criollo bean. Now, one of the things that we're controlling for here is the processing of these beans. They're all processed in exactly the same way through the machines ground because they're all being made by the same manufacturer. And you can notice how butterly smooth these are. But one of the things I've noticed in a lot of other manufacturers is sometimes if their chocolate bars aren't quite as smooth as maybe Will's are, their Criollo beans instantly do become very smooth. All right, so this is my favorite bar out of the line. Not to give away the ending, but I really like this one. But what's funny about it is it sits on the shelf. It doesn't sell a whole lot unless I have samples out, unless I recommend it. And then it starts selling really well. And I don't know, Will, correct me if I'm wrong. I believe he's done with the production of this bar because the seeds that he got, the beans he got for this bar were produced, and they haven't been produced again for a couple of years. So he says that he thinks they're producing another batch. I don't know if you're going to get more or not, but it's really fun to have this Criollo, this Porcelana in the line of chocolates. So very fun. And I have all these bars on my website that you can buy individually, or you can go to Will's website and you might actually be able to get better prices on Will's website, because one of the things that's true at my shop, but what's maybe even more true, since I'm putting such an effort to get out into the world, for the chocolate makers who sell in these little shops that don't just sell chocolate, so they don't have a chocolate online presence, is that the craft chocolate maker sales are way, way, way being crushed by all this stay-at-home stuff. So if you really love Will's stuff, I would suggest go to his website and buy it from him directly. Really support the small chocolate maker. Aha, so Will says one less Porcelana run. So some of these I may stock up on, depending. I'm trying to pre-buy for Christmas this year already, just to really get some money going to all the small chocolate makers out there to really help them weather this storm. All right, so we've tried 4. I don't know if someone has a favorite. You can just notice, again, in these 4, how unbelievably different. And someone says, oh, what's the difference in dark chocolate? Doesn't it all taste the same? Well, if you can get them to sit down and try these 4 chocolates, then you're like, whoa, well, there really is quite a huge difference. All right, and so we have a few new ones here, and now you notice we're switching over into the new colored bars, right? So you have a new wrapper, you have this new shiny wrapper here. So these are some of the newer lines are the ones that have turned over more. Haiti's a little bit newer, Nicaragua's a little bit newer. I think the 100%, this is a little bit older bar, but it did get the new box. All right, we're gonna skip Haiti, and we're gonna jump to the 85% Nicaragua. When this was released, I believe this was released for the first time last year. I immediately loved this bar as an 85% bar, and it's really fun to compare. After you go ahead and open your 85%, try a little bit of the 85%, then go back and try a little bit of the 75%, and then go back and try a little bit of the 85% again. And tell me what you think. I mean, we're at 85%, we're at 15% sugar in this one, so much less sugar than the 25% sugar of the Ghana. But again, it's very funny, very interesting how they are going to be so different. But again, notice how smooth it is. And one of the fun things about this Nicaragua bar that Will told me was this tenor in Nicaragua is a cooperative play where they're drying and fermenting the beans for all the farmers. And when that drying and fermenting is centralized, and you get people who are really concerned about the drying and the fermenting, that you can do a lot of stuff with the fermentation process to really change the flavor of the bar. So I believe, if I remember correctly, he said, when he talked to the people here at Tenor, they asked, what kind of bar are you making? And he says, well, I want an 85% that's very neutral, very smooth. I said, oh, well, you want this fermentation. They sent him. He made a batch, and he said, yeah, you're exactly right. That's exactly what I wanted, right? Because the fermentation made such a huge difference on what we're looking for in a bar. So anyway, sorry, I've been talking. I haven't been paying attention to my chocolate, but just notice how mellow, how light. And actually, the first time I tried this one, I said, you know what this one really goes with? I don't know if you guys have anything to drink, but I thought, yeah, that one really goes with a little bit of wine. I know I didn't advertise that. I know that wasn't really, that's sort of a no-no in this thing because it's so strongly flavored, but that's immediately what I thought. But just to segue here a little bit, my next chocolate sampling, to give a little plug on, I can't remember now if it was, I think May 1st is Friday, 7 o'clock, same time on May 1st is going to be a wine sampling. And so it's already up on my webpage. And we got some wine and some bars that we're going to be doing wine and chocolate. These are the 5 that I selected. So we have the Siren, Mayan Spice, the Ritual Madagascar, Pump Street Ecuador, Maru Tianjiang, and the Rocca Pink Sea Salt. And here locally at Cheezer's that sells wine, this is the wine that Cheezer's selected, Honoro Vera. I would say it's a very oaky, very dry, very minerally red wine. You can buy it at Cheezer's to go along with the sampling, or you could get your own wine, right? This is, get the drier oakery type, maybe Rioja, something like that. This one's from Spain. We're going to be doing this on the 1st of May. Same sort of thing, but let's pair some wine and some chocolate. All right, so I don't know if people got through and did their comparison. What do you think of the Nicaragua, right? It's hard to, people are surprised when you say, oh, but it's an 85%, but it tastes very light. That's what I'd describe it. I'd say it's a very light 85. And then you go back to the 75, and the 75 is a very dark, a very heavy 75, right? Just such a fun, I think this is why I got into chocolate, was these single origin dark chocolates. And of course, what did I become? Well, I became, the flavored chocolates, or all these ones you see back here, all these, the orange or the Markham and Fitz, or the fig, or the coconut, right? Those are the ones that sell the most. But what I really love are these single origin dark chocolates, just how different they all are. All right, so I think we've given time for comparing Ghana, comparing Nicaragua. So now let's jump back to Haiti and go ahead and try this one. I find this is the most ephemeral, weird, it's hard to pin down. And then Will told me that it's also the one where the roasts, or not the roasts, the fermentations and the dryings are very different from batch to batch. So it is sort of one that changes over batches because it's not very consistent, the beans that are coming out of Haiti. And often the beans coming out of Haiti are not what the primary shipment is. So sometimes they get left behind. Sometimes they don't even come. It's a very hard bar to work with, or a very hard sourcing to work with. I'll go ahead and try this as an 80%. Go ahead and try the Haiti. So he describes it as rich and herbal. I think herbal is a very good word to describe it. And one thing I noticed on these ones is they no longer have the, nope, that one doesn't either. The little flavor profile. Guys, maybe those are only uncommon cacao flavor profiles. Anyway, so you can go ahead and try the Haiti 80%. And see what you think of that one. And all of these come in bigger bars, so you can see the Venezuela only comes in a big bar, doesn't come in the 1 ounce bar, only comes in 2. All the other ones come in 2 ounce bars, except for the Haiti that only comes in the 1 ounce bar. I think partially because the batch of beans was so small that allowed for a larger number of bars to produce, so we never made a 2 ounce bar of the Haiti. All right. So now we're approaching the last chocolate here in our WM line. And that is our 100% unsweetened. And this, whenever I say I have 100% chocolate, that gets the most shocked looks for anyone that's here. And so they say, well, what do you mean, for baking? I said, no, for eating. And they look at me like I'm crazy. So here, go ahead, it is 100%. Go ahead and open it. And if you're nervous, instead of just breaking your piece in half, break it in half and half, right? So give yourself a little bit of a quarter piece. Especially if you have a 6-year-old eating at home, sampling at home, or in case at my house, I have a 3-year-old sampling along at home. When she saw the picture of this one, she said, oh, chocolate. That's what I want. And I said, well, tonight. And so, all right, Laura, or Katie, sorry, Katie, see what you think of the 100%. Actually, she doesn't really turn down chocolate, so even the 100%. All right, so we'll go ahead and take one here. You can immediately tell that it doesn't have sugar, right? But you can also tell immediately that it's not astringent that's making your mouth want to pucker. Right, it's just very dark, very intense. And if you don't want to, don't necessarily have to take a second piece of that. But like I've done for a couple of my videos, a couple of my other things, if you have a chocolate, and everyone can choose a different one here, that one you like, or one that isn't necessarily your favorite, this is your opportunity to go ahead and make drinking chocolate. That's one of my fun things that I like to do, is make drinking chocolate. So what you need to make drinking chocolate is you need your pitcher of warm liquid, and it could be it could be water, it could be milk, it could be, nut milk, whatever it is. You need your bowl to break your chocolate into and to mix it all up. And then you need your cup to drink it. And so for me, what I was going to do here is I was going to take my 100% here and break it into pieces. And while I'm doing that, actually while I should be doing that, and you can do this at home if you want to, or you can try a different one, is I should go and take my milk and stick it in the microwave for 30 seconds. You can heat it up in a pan. It's hard to heat such a small amount. Remember I said measure 1 ounce, because I would take half of one of these bars, and half of one of these bars is going to be half an ounce. So I like to do about 1 ounce I like to double my volume or weight for my milk or my water or whatever it is. If you have kids, I make it a kid's hot chocolate. by doubling the liquid. So instead of doing 1 ounce of liquid, I would do 2 ounces of liquid for half an ounce of chocolate. One of the tricks of using melting chocolate, how many squares go in a bowl? So I'd put 6 squares in a bowl and break the squares into quarters if you can, right? So you can sort of see what mine looks like there. So I have 1 ounce of milk in here, but I don't want to pour the whole amount of milk in there. So one of the things that happens when people make chocolate, hot chocolate or drinking chocolate, or out of this, is that if you use too much liquid right away, it doesn't really fully melt. So I'm just pouring a little bit in, right? So I'm not pouring very much in, just a little bit. Because you can see what the chocolate likes to do is it likes to not fully melt, it likes to leave in little chunks. So you want to do just a little bit, almost just enough to give you the liquid, to give you the melt. We'll go ahead and stir it up here. Like I said, you can do this with water. The difference between doing water, you could do this with cream if you wanted to. And you may find that because if your container is cold, it's absorbing a lot of the heat. If you didn't quite get yours to melt all the way, that another 10 seconds in the microwave might really help get yours to melt. I think that's what I've happened here, is that my chocolate was, my pieces probably weren't quite big enough, or my bowl just absorbed a little too much of the heat. So I'm gonna go back and just zap it for another 10 seconds. And if you want to at home, sometimes I put the liquid in with the chocolate when I put it in the microwave to begin with, because that just helps it melt a little bit quicker. All right, so now you can see on the sides, it wanted to sort of separate, but now have it all together. Look how thick that is. All right, so we have that pretty thick there, and then I'll just add a little bit more. Still, I'm not adding it all at once. Mix that up. So a good drinking chocolate, if you let it cool, you should be able to stand your spoon up in it. That's what I always say. It's like drinking a liquid truffle. And boy, you can drink an awful lot more of it. It's easy to drink an entire chocolate bar. All right, now we'll pour a little bit more in there. And since we're using such a small amount, a tiny bit of liquid makes a huge difference. So you can, sort of hard to see, right? So you can see mine now. And so I used half a bar of this 100%. And what you have is no sugar except for whatever was in the liquid that you've used. So you'll have just a small amount of carbs. All right, and so since it's small, I did bring out my little cup instead of my bigger cup, since I'm doing a small amount. And we'll go ahead and put it there. So go ahead and pour that in. And I don't know how many of you watched my YouTube channel. Not very many, I can tell, right, by the number of views. All right. But I like these shallow bowls because it's easy to lick them out, because you don't want to let all that go to waste. All right, so now I have my little cup. I have 1.5 ounces of drinking chocolate here. And hey, Fruition Chocolate's here. Welcome. All right. So about 1.5 ounces here. And you can do this with any of the chocolates if you want to, whatever flavor you like. Obviously, you'll get sweeter as you go down. Like I said, if you want a little bit lighter flavor, like someone already did, you can use half the amount of chocolate. But notice when you add the liquid slowly, you're going to get, right, a really nice emulsion. It's not going to be all that chunky. So I've had people tell me, oh, but when I get nice drinking chocolate, it always stays lumpy, right, because you add too much liquid. All right, so here we go. I have my little bit. Right. All right, all right, all right. Yes, I can lick the bowl, and I can do it pretty well without getting my face too dirty again because it's nice and shallow. Pretty good. Thank you very much for watching, everyone. Hopefully I'll see you on Instagram, see you on my shop, see you on YouTube, because I am still only at 10 followers on YouTube. I know it's only been a week, but it's still, my kids still laugh at me for how few followers I have. So help me out, won't you? All right, well, thanks for watching. Unless there are any last questions, going once, going twice. All right, thanks everyone. Have a good night. Stay home, stay safe.